verses offhand. I've mentioned in the past that I listen to a lot of podcasts and interviews here on YouTube and wherever while I'm working. Makes the job a little easier if it's a good interview. And I've experienced something. This is like the second or third time in the past couple of months where I've experienced this, where someone like a celebrity, or and in this particular case it was an athlete, but like someone with a celebrated individual, someone that would be known, would be talking about what they do, how they do it, and this kind of thing. And this particular guy, and I've talked about profanity in the past, how as a Christian, profanity is a big deal. There's at least 4 verses that talk about avoiding the profane, how we speak, because we're representatives of the faith. But I heard this guy talking about how he came up his life, this and that, and how if he has any, he just puts it all on God. He leaves it up to God. Where do you want me? This thing, that, he prays and meditates and all this on God. But in this interview, he must have dropped the F-bomb a half a dozen times. And I believe the man was sincere about he believes he's praying to God, and if this is a good decision for me, God, help me make this decision. If this is where I'm supposed to be, unless you tell me otherwise, this is all great stuff. But it just tells me that this guy has never read the book. Because you don't get to do that as a representative of God through Jesus Christ. We don't get to, and I make these mistakes. I'm not coming from I'm not necessarily preaching this, but it just tells me that a lot of people are claiming to be of the faith, but have no knowledge of what they're doing. And it might not even be their fault. A lot of people don't want to read the Bible, but we don't get to, you can give any kind of testimony you want, but that's kind of a sign of repentance, and where you changed. You don't get to be like you were, who you were before. So if profanity was a problem, hopefully if you're on the right path, you realize that's not something you get to do anymore. I make these mistakes. So I'm not coming from some super righteous position, but it's just interesting how I think we've come to a point now where people are so starved for spirituality, and yet they're claiming this faith in Jesus. If you have faith in Jesus, then you probably want to do what he says, which is following his teachings, and profanity isn't part of that, because you are a representative of the faith. But I think we come to a point now where it just kind of blows my mind. And from a non-Christian perspective, because I've complained about this probably 3 or 4 times in videos over the years here on YouTube, and it's a lost cause. I'm not like I'm going to change anybody's mind or anything, but I mean, if you're a Christian, if you're someone who's of the faith, you need to be aware of what's going on, the restrictions, the do's and don'ts, and you're going to get that out of the Bible. Whether you claim, a lot of people don't have any faith, I don't trust the Bible, this and that, then I don't know what the heck you're following, or why even bother. But if you are claiming to be a Christian, you have to be aware of this. This is a something. We will be judged by every word. That's a verse. But something outside of that. Years ago, this had to be the late 80s. I want to say early 90s. We had a customer in my family business who was a Hell's Angel. Still is a Hell's Angel. I believe he's still alive. He might be back in prison now, but he was out of prison. He became a customer of ours. We're in the golf business. We get all kinds. We get a very diverse group. Our customers, our market. And some people say, well, maybe the guy was just that way because he wanted something. He didn't want anything. He just came as a customer. But he got to know my parents real well. This guy, this Hell's Angel, and he was the picture. When you picture a Hell's Angel, guy would be close to 300 pounds, 6'2" or 3", massive man, got your attention. But when he dealt with my parents, when he spoke to my parents, he had such reverence, especially for my mom, Mrs., Mr. You know, this. I mean, to hear this man speak, and to just about anybody, made me feel like, man, I don't have enough reverence for my parents compared to this guy. This guy was it was just the way he spoke. He spoke. I mean, the way he talked to my parents, the way you think this guy's a Hell's Angel. It's just not what you would have expected for some. Like I said, I think the guy's back in prison again, if he's still alive. But he just, and I don't think it was a scam or like he was gaming him. He just came as a customer, purchased, and went out and did whatever, blah blah this and that, and never demanded anything. But would sit and talk with my parents, have conversations, this and that. It was just very impressive. And as a Hell's Angel. A few years later, just a similar story. I have a family friend. My grandmother lived in the back house over here, the big house, and she was there for 2 years. She says, "Hey, something's wrong with our ceiling fan. Can you fix that?" I said, "No, Grandma, I don't do electrical." But I said, we got a friend down the street. I'll call him, see if he comes over. Long story short, he comes over. He looks at it. Now, this guy knows me. He knows my grandmother. Been a friend of the family for decades. But he's builds homes. He knows all this stuff. Very handy. He's college educated. He was retired now. He's college educated. He was part of it. He was an executive in a business that was in the construction industry. And he was in charge of all the representatives this side, the west side of the Mississippi. He had a big job, made good money. So had all these people that he was in charge of for a very big company, college educated, an intelligent man. Anyhow, he shows up, comes into the kitchen where this ceiling fan's out of whack, and proceeds to tell me and my grandmother what is wrong with this ceiling fan. Takes about a minute and a half. He uses the F word about 6 times, and said a couple of other things, like how you explain man parts. I'll just leave it at that. Use some other words that was just amazing. I was in utter shock, explaining about this the ceiling fan, and I was dumbfounded. And my grandmother could tell it was that she was 90 pounds soaking wet. She's a little teeny thing, but she knew people, how to deal with people. And so once he stopped, I said, "Thank you. Let's get you going. I don't want to waste any of your time." But I just kind of rushed him out of the house. But could not believe that this man didn't have the sense not to speak like that in front of my grandmother. I mean, okay, if you said it in front of me, I'm a guy, I could take it, whatever the case is. But my grandmother, I mean, talk about a slap in the face. I mean, just such disrespect. This woman had to be, she was her late 80s. Oh my gosh, times are different. But here it is, a Hell's Angel speaks to my family like might have been a preacher, and here's this college educated guy who you'd think would know better, very very smart man, and I couldn't believe that. Anyhow, if you don't believe me, I was gonna give the verses. As a Christian, we are to avoid the profanity because we're representing. Now, a lot of people believe, because of the way they were taught the faith, that, well, you just get to stay who you are and act the same. Get to act like the world. You don't. But you see a lot of people today where just it's no longer, the profanity is no longer even a negative. It's just a vernacular. It's just accepted. I think it's just terrible. Anyhow. If you're a Christian, you can't talk like that. Love you. God bless.